Hello and welcome to Tech Deals. NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1050 versus AMD's Radeon RX 460. Which one should you buy? That's what we're covering today in this video. It's a comparison between these cards, the pros and cons, which one I think most people should buy, and what do they play. Now, let me state that I've done individual reviews on both of these cards that contain information that will not be in this video. Link to those individual reviews in the description below. Please go check those out. Furthermore, these are both 2 GB cards. I have also reviewed the 4 GB versions of these cards and done a comparison on those. The 1050 Ti 4 GB and the RX 460 4 GB. Those will also be linked in the description below. This video is all about the 2 GB cards. What are they good for? Who should buy them? Who shouldn't? And which one of these is the better buy? Esports games. That's what these are meant for. Esports or casual gaming. Rocket League, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, Overwatch, League of Legends, Dota 2. Those kinds of games shine on either one of these cards. It's what they were made for. It's what they're aimed and focused at. It's not all they can do. They can both of these cards will absolutely play Battlefield 1 and Grand Theft Auto 5. But they won't play it at 1080p at ultra detail. And I'll talk more about that later in the video, but we're primarily focused here on casual gaming because these things will play them beautifully. Either one of these cards will play all those games I just mentioned, all 5 of those games without any trouble at 1080p. You do not need more than 2 GB of VRAM to play Overwatch and Dota 2 and Counter-Strike Global Offensive. You just don't. I will have upcoming comparison live game bench videos. So if you have not subscribed to my channel, please click the button beneath the video and subscribe. It doesn't cost anything and you get notifications of when those come out. But what I will do is put together videos of things like Overwatch and League of Legends on both of these cards and show them to you back to back so that you can see how well they do or don't play each of those various games. And I will also have games like Battlefield 1 and such on them. It's not the focus, but I'll have a couple of those on these cards. So which one should you buy? Well, it's not as simple as that. The simple answer would be whichever one you prefer from the company you prefer that has the best price. That's the simple answer. But there's a little bit more to it than that. Let me get into the weeds a little bit on the details. The RX 460 is slower than the 1050. And when a lot of people hear that, they go, well, then why would you want to buy it? Because it costs less. That's a perfectly good reason. Now you might say, but I don't want my games to run slower. Let me be very, very clear about this. And I'm going to show this in the upcoming game videos. Slower is a relative term. Just because a card is faster doesn't mean you'll notice it or can use it. Both of these cards, for example, will easily run League of Legends at over 60 frames a second. Unless you have what's called a high refresh rate monitor, a 100 Hz or a 144 Hz monitor. If you have a standard 60 Hz monitor, anything over 60 frames a second is simply not displayed. Most monitors, and yes, this is probably your monitor, can only physically accept 60 frames per second. Anything over 60 frames a second are simply discarded. Even if the card renders it, it is not displayed because your monitor can't display it. So if the 1050 can play League of Legends at 100 frames a second and the RX 460 can only play it at 90 frames a second and you are on a 60 Hz monitor, you will see absolutely zero performance difference between these two cards. But your pocketbook might see a difference. On the day I'm filming this video, and prices change, and please keep in mind when I talk about prices, all things are relative, which is why I'm not just making a blanket recommendation. Prices will change, and you may or may not even live in the United States, which is where I live, and so prices might be different in your region of the world. On the day I'm filming this video, the GTX 1050, the one sitting here, was $120. Now, there are less expensive versions of this card. Zotac Mini is $110, and there's others. I just simply bought this one because I personally prefer the EVGA brand. Zotac's fine, PNY's fine, MSI's fine, Asus is fine. Buy any of them, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. I talked about that more in the individual video. $120 for this card. The Gigabyte is under $100 after mail-in rebate, in November at least. They've got a $30 mail-in rebate right now on the Gigabyte card, which puts it under $100. Now, maybe $20 or $30 is not a big deal to you. But here's an interesting thought. If the 1050 is 10% faster than the 460, but 20% more money isn't really a deal. You're paying more money per unit of performance at those price levels. But when you watch this video and when you click the links below to go to Amazon and Newegg, and I will have not just these cards, not just the Gigabyte and EVGA, but those will be the full list of all of these cards. And especially at Newegg, it's easy for me to pre-sort it by price lowest to highest. If the price gap has narrowed or disappeared completely when you watch this video, then maybe you should buy the 1050. But if there's a $30 price difference between these cards and only a 10% performance difference, then the RX 460 actually becomes the better buy. They both perform well enough for the games that I mentioned. Now, what about the big splashy titles? Does the extra 10% performance make a difference in Battlefield 1? No, not really. Let's say the RX 460 will play Battlefield 1 at 30 frames a second. Great, 10% more performance on the 1050 means it'll play at 33. That's not a big difference. In fact, at 1080p, you're probably going to have to put Battlefield 1 down to medium or probably even low detail to get really good playable frame rates at 60 plus frames a second out of either one of these cards. You may even have to lower the resolution yet. I haven't actually tried Battlefield 1 on these. That's the very first thing I'm going to be doing on these, by the way, because I'm actually quite curious to see how well they do. But I will be posting a side-by-side comparison of Battlefield 1 on these cards in a future video. So, price-wise, if the RX 460 is less expensive by 10 or 20 or more dollars, then it's the deal. If the cards are the same price, then the 1050 is the deal. Another factor that might separate which one you prefer is, do you like the green team or the red team? NVIDIA, whose logo is green, which is why we call it the green team, they have the GeForce Experience and Shadow Play, which is what they provide to record and stream your gameplay. If you don't care about this, it may not be relevant, but Shadow Play is the program that NVIDIA provides that lets you either record your gameplay for later saving or later uploading, or live stream to Twitch or YouTube Live. AMD provides Plays TV. Now, there are other programs on the market besides what the two companies provide. You have OBS, or Open Broadcast Software, and then you have XSplit Broadcast, or XSplit streaming software. They actually have two different programs. There are different ways you can stream and record your gameplay if you are interested. But you may prefer, for personal reasons, NVIDIA's drivers or NVIDIA software, or you may prefer AMD's drivers or AMD software. The software that's included is not something I can do an objective analysis of. I cannot put a bullet point list up here of why you might personally prefer NVIDIA or AMD software. That's simply a personal experience. If you don't have a preference, then ignore this part. But if you're just somebody who prefers one or the other, that might be the point that sways your viewpoint on these cards. I will say that you may notice that the Gigabyte card has two fans. It doesn't need two fans. It has two fans mostly because that's a marketing thing. When you look at both of these cards, do not be at all afraid to buy the one fan version of either card. You can find one fan and two fan versions of both cards in the list below. These are roughly 75 watt cards, max draw. They may not even draw 75 depending on what you're doing. Anybody who's concerned, well, but won't the two fans run better? No, it won't. Now, at higher end, if you have a 200 watt card, a GTX 1070 or RX 480, yes, that can make a difference. But these are very low powered cards and it makes no difference whatsoever. And the reason for this, I'll give you a simple example. Intel's i5 processor has a wattage draw up to, now they make different models, but their top end i5 is a 95 watt processor. You can run that 95 watt processor on the cheap $5 little round heatsink and fan that Intel provides for free in the box. It runs just fine on a $5 heatsink and fan that just sits right on the motherboard and does nothing fancy. If a 95 watt i5 chip only needs a little dinky $5 fan to run well, why does a 75 watt graphics card need a big double or triple fan complicated cooling solution? Answer, it doesn't. But many people have been conditioned by years and years of high power draw graphics cards that 2 and 3 fans are somehow better than one. And this is not a knock against Gigabyte. Many brands are guilty of it. EVGA is guilty of it. Their For the Win versions of some of their cards have 2 fans, whereas their SuperClocked cards have 1. It doesn't matter, but it's marketing. 2 fans looks like more than 1. So when you look at the various cards, do not be dissuaded by which card has how many fans. At this level, it makes no difference. So that's gaming and the differences of the cards. What about non-gaming? I just want to briefly mention NVidia has their CUDA cores and AMD has their OpenCL and streaming processors. If you're doing 3D animation, video rendering, video editing, the program you use may also determine which card you buy. Some programs that do, for example, 3D animation support both cards and will accelerate that type of work using a graphics card as opposed to just your CPU. Other programs only use one or the other, and some use none at all. If you're asking, should I buy a graphics card to accelerate that type of thing, you have to do your research and figure out, does X program that I plan to use or am using use either CUDA cores or OpenCL with AMD streaming processors to accelerate that function? My best advice for you, because there's no way I can cover the hundreds and hundreds of different programs that do this, my best advice for you, go to the official forums, go to the frequently asked questions site of whatever program that you're using, and either ask in the forums or message boards or simply look through the frequently asked questions, search for CUDA or OpenCL, and that's just spelled the way it sounds, open and then the letter CL, to see whether or not either of these cards are supported. Beyond that function, the acceleration of 3D animation, video editing, video rendering, either one of these cards would make excellent home theater multimedia PC graphics cards. Why? They both have HDMI 2.0. If you're thinking of putting one of these into a basic computer that you're going to plug into your television because you're going to stream your movies or you're going to stream TV shows or you want to run stuff on a big television, and you have a nice 4K television, if your TV has HDMI 2.0, you can plug it into either one of these and your computer will display its output perfectly to your television. The older cards generally only had HDMI 1.4 and did not properly support 4K televisions. Now, if you have a 1080p or full HD television, this doesn't apply. Even the older cards would do that just fine. Frankly, a $35 to $50 graphics card will run a 1080p television without any muss or fuss. These are beneficial if you need HDMI 2.0 for 4K home theater multimedia PCs. So that's some of the non-gaming functions. Coming back to the gaming functions briefly, I will just say my personal advice is where these cards are priced right now, $120 versus less than $100 for the RX 460. If I just wanted to play the esports games that I mentioned earlier, I would buy the RX 460. I am an NVIDIA fan and I have an NVIDIA card in my own personal gaming machine, but I'm not so much as a fan to recognize a deal when I see one. And under $100 for the RX 460 versus $120 for the GTX 1050, League of Legends isn't going to care. It'll run beautifully on both cards. Now, if the 1050 was $100, that changes the equation. So this is why I'm talking in such detail in terms of performance rather than just saying buy one or the other, because prices change and prices may be different where you live. So I hope this has been helpful to you. Like this video if you like it. If you don't, remember to subscribe to my channel with the big huge red button down there. That's how you get notifications to future upcoming performance videos such as the side-by-side gaming videos of this, as well as other hardware unboxings, reviews, how-to guides, computer build guides, and all other cool tech-related stuff. Questions and comments in the comment box below. And as always, video description, links to Amazon and Newegg. I would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much, and I will see you in the next video.